again. So this week, so last week, I gave you basically toe in the water um, demonstration of. Please sit down. So basically, we had a toe in the water demonstration of what you can do with Blueprint at a very basic level. We are so again. I did the Hello World of Blueprint of 3D level designers, which is basically can we turn it on and off a light. This week we're going to redo that assignment. And we're going to do it using a blueprint class instead. So basically you'll have an entity that you can drag into the world. So this is the first thing I need to try and get across to you is that when we talk about things that are in our game, we talk about them in terms of entities. And this comes the entity term comes from the id branch of programming and whatnot. But it's a good generic term of something that's in our game. So our player, the character that he's running around is an entity. The weapon is an entity. The projectile that it's shooting, so we're talking about rocket launchers, the rockets, in this case would be an entity in the level. A grenade launcher would throw grenades. That would be another entity in the level. So these are things we are interacting with. That's a high generic level term. When we talk about building an actor class, we're talking about building an entity that's going to go into the game. Now, Unreal Engine is really good about inheritance, about reusing code. We will talk about inheritance later on. But one of the things that, we'll talk about like building a class that's intended to be inherited. But for right now, you'll be inheriting from specific classes. And right now, actor classes. So basically, we're talking about things that are placed in the world. And these are simple from it's a static mesh to I've got a particle system here to things that we could be interacting with. Things so that basically everything that you can be placed in the scene is going to be an actor class. I'm going to point out the first inheritance off of actor class that's the most important is the pawn, because that's what the player can control. Second will probably be player controller, because that's the representation of the player. And with those three classes right there, you've got the majority of your interactions in your game. So Unreal was built about interactions between objects. That is the fundamental from Unreal Engine 1 to today to Unreal Engine 5. That has been the philosophy and foundation of this engine. And that's something that, your classes are basically the foundation of those objects. So in Unreal, a class, we've got classes. Classes consist of components. That's the basic thing. And they're showing here basically there is a add component button. And when we get into Unreal, that's the first thing I'm going to do is going to show you this panel right here. There is a viewport here, so the viewport tab. So when you're in the viewport tab, basically think of it as that you are constructing the object itself. This is where you can add other components such as a skeletal mesh. They have an arrow component. They have a mesh. They have a camera boom. Basically, it's an anchor point for the camera, and then the follow cam, the camera itself. So these are the things that they've got. They've also got a capsule component. And they can tell you basically, so here's the third-person component, third-person character. That's itself. I think it inherited off a character. So it came with a capsule component, an arrow component, and a mesh. So you'll see that things are inherited from classes. So when you build a new class, you're going to inherit from another class. you'll get pieces inherited from it. Character movement component came in as well. So in this case, they added the camera boom and the follow camera to this new blueprint class. Again, capsule components are for collision, meshes, and this is the skeletal mesh. It could be a static mesh. We could be talking about static mesh if it's not. Skeletal mesh is basically objects that have been rigged and can have animations. Static meshes are single meshes. They're not animated. We're not applying a actual animation to them. Now they could be animated in that like their materials could be animated. That's a different thing. Again, the follow camera is the camera component that they've added. So they've actually added so we're not having to add a camera into the scene. We've added it to our pawn essentially. And this is obviously definitely a pawn type, given the way that it's got a camera on it. And then the character movement again contains properties that use define movement. All right, construction script. Okay, so in object-oriented programming, there is this concept of the constructor. When this class is created, the constructor is called. And when the constructor is done, it returns the new instance of the object. The construction script basically is the idea of the constructor in Unreal. So when the blueprint is first added to the level, when there's a change to its properties, or when the class is spawned at runtime, the construction script has a separate graph where actions can be placed. Construction script won't run on place actors when the game starts. So if it's in the scene already, the construction script has already been called. This is important. That this is basically the construction script is there for specific purposes. Most of the time, you will be using an event called onBeginPlay instead to do a lot of different things. So, and here basically they are when this construction script gets called. The target here is a static mesh, and they are applying a material to it and on index, so the root. So this is probably a static mesh that has a single material on it, and so basically there is these would be variables. These would probably be a component. This is probably going to be a variable, but essentially, and I'll show you variables in a moment. But whenever the material type is modified, the construction script goes right ahead and assigns that material to the static mesh. So this is an example of the construction script. This is us working in the editor, using scripting things for the editor, as opposed to scripting things for the game itself. That's why you would do this. So we'll talk about events. So things kick off via events, these red nodes. And we are in what's called the event graph. So the construction script is technically an event graph. The only event there is the construction, when the constructor gets called, essentially. The event graph. So here, we're basically on begin play, we are entering the game. Begin play is called when the game starts, or when the game starts, when the level is loaded. Effectively, is when the level is loaded. So game starts, level is loaded. Begin play gets called on all actors, and if it's got anything for begin play, it gets run. You will do a lot of initialization work with begin play. One of the things you'll see me is that I will probably throw all my initialization into a function in Unreal, and then have that function node gets called here. And I'll show you the function, how to create a function. Tick event. So these the game. So think of it as every gameplay tick. This is like at least 30 to 60 frames a second. It has a variable here called delta seconds. For those who are in Unity, that would be delta time. And this is the how long it has it been since we last called the tick. And basically here, and this is I would have made a variable, but basically they're saying that for every second, this object is going to move 100 units down the x-axis essentially. So here's add actor world offset. Push it down the world every 10. So again, 10 centimeters per second. They say use tick only when necessary because it can affect performance. So don't be putting high. We'll talk about what is things that are high performance that would affect performance. Your object doesn't need to recalculate its AI behaviors every tick. For example, that's one of the things that's going on. We'll look at timers later on, but that's one of the first things. Collision events, and there's 3 of them, and you've used 2 so far. You've used begin overlap and overlap, and these are again 4 triggers. But basically, hit event will execute a simulation hit event properties if one of the actors is in the collision is set to true. So we'll see that. There's a generate overlap event and generate hit event. We'll see that in the editor. But basically, are triggered when 2 actors collide or overlap. Hit projectiles are more likely going to be using hit as opposed to begin overlap, end overlap, unless you write it as trigger. You're probably better at writing as a hit event. So hit event is solid object hits another solid object. My grenade hit something. We can ask, what was it? Oh, not a player. It was maybe. No, we can simply be like, oh, it's a wall. Well, if it's a grenade, we'll say, bounce off in that direction. If it was a rocket, be like, blow up, kill yourself. Well, remove yourself, I should say, from the scene. What was that? No. You wouldn't know. What you would then, if you had hit a player, you would call take damage on player, and that's a different event altogether. Mouse interaction, you're not gonna really use these. Like, oh, cool. Called when the mouse is over the actor when hooray! They're here. But you have to enable the mouse. There's a lot more. This slide is hiding a lot of information about how you do mouse interaction. So they're there, but it's not necessarily like you're not going to be making. There'd be a lot more work than just these nodes. So we're going to look at, here is an event, input. So spacebar. We will handle input in another way. We'll talk about the enhanced input system later on. But this is basically, I'm reading the spacebar. Now, this is not how you would normally do this in a big game. For the small little demonstrations, this is fine. But as you move on, this would be handled in a different way. But for right now, we're basically looking at, hey, here's the spacebar. We press it, respawn an actor, and that's really this is the node that we're looking at. And here is basically where is the location. So this actor knows that it can take the spacebar, and then it's generating some blueprint effect fire. We will make blueprint classes to spawn, to be quite honest. There can be issues going straight to the effect itself. So destroying actors. So there is the destroy actor. So this is removing the actor from the scene. Now let's talk about the explodable barrel. We place in the scene. Next, it gets hit with a weapon, and it causes that damage causes it to explode. We switch the mesh to the broken barrel, and we spawn the explosion. And we could say that like the barrel stays there for a while, but we could be like, we won't. We'll clean it up. So we'll wait X number of seconds after it's been exploded, and then remove the actor. Now this is going like once it's like health is below 0, remove it right away. And that is something we'll talk about that. That there is polish that we'll do, and that's just more code. The one thing that we're seeing here is this branch node, and that essentially is an if statement. You know, this is a node that starts off a function. It plugs into the if branch, and the condition here basically if the health is less than 0, this is going to return back a true or false. And if it's true, again, false, we don't care. True, then we will destroy the actor. That's what this, and this is a function here in action. Functions can have outputs, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Get all actors of class. So what are they looking for? So they made a BP coin class, so a collectible class. And right now, so this is an event, custom event that was made called Hide All Coins. And we'll talk about how to create custom events in a little bit. And it's going to get all actors of class. It's going to ask for all actors that have BP coin. And this includes the actual BP coin class that may be placed in the scene, but also other child classes of BP coin. Children, so basically when you inherit, that's an is relationship. So we have, let's say we have a BP coin and we have 3 other coin classes that all inherit from BP coin. Those 3 child classes are BP coin classes. That's the is relationship here. And it's basically going through, and each of them is basically going to, it's basically looping through it, and each time, this is the loop body. So think of this as the code block. Every time it goes through, it's going to do this, and it's going to do on the array element. That's going to be the target. And it's going to hide the hide hidden in game. So there's so they're hiding all these objects right now. Point out here, this is a costly operation, so don't use it in the tick event. So don't do this every single time you need to. If you need to query things that are in the scene, don't query them like this. One of the things you'll end up probably doing is you'll get all actors of class and store the information in a local variable. Or a blueprint variable, so that you're not hitting the world over and over and over again. Now, granted, when you do that, you have to make sure that this array is being updated correctly. So if you're adding things to the world, you're adding them appropriately, and you're removing them appropriately on destruction. So, I want to point out one thing about destroy actor. Destroy actor is the last node that you will call. Like once you say destroy actor, nothing else is going to get performed on the object. So just be mindful. Like destroy actor basically says you're done, you're removed from the world, and if there was any other nodes or any other code that you wanted to run, won't get run. So just be mindful of that. It is again blueprints. It's possible to create a variable that references an actor or an object. So let me actually bring up Unreal. Let's actually go in. Let's actually create a blueprint class. Let's take a look at a couple things right now. Before we talk about referencing other classes, first thing we want to do is look at how I want to look at how Unreal reference things. So in my content draw, I have this BP Hello World like class, and this is what we're going to build first. This is going to be the so again we go to our event graph, our constructor graph, our viewport. Right now I've got a cube in the viewport, and I've got a box collision on it. We'll come back to this in a little bit. Back to the event graph. So what they're saying right now is that there is a section here for variables, and we can hit the plus button to bring it up. And right now is what is the name of the variable? And I'm going to call this count. Now, by being components in my class, I have references to them. So these are my components of my object already. I can refer to them like these are their variables that I can refer to. All right, I'm going to close the components and just so we look at the count. Right now it's a Boolean. All right, so I can set Boolean, I can set the type, integer 64, float, name, which is a special type in Unreal, we'll talk later on, same as text. They're versions of strings. Vectors, rotators, and transforms. And these are the common variables that you will be using. A rotator is a 3D rotation, and it's been here since Unreal Engine 1, and the rotator can get funky at times. Just know that when you're dealing with a rotation, you're dealing with the rotator class. Just know it has a history. That's why this is part of the technical debt of Unreal. Transform, basically this is the I'm actually bring this right in. We can drag it into the scene, and we can get, and it's asked, do I want it to get it or set it? I'm going to use it to get right now. What's interesting is that some of the properties, such as like this is again is a transform. It has multiple information. We can actually right click and split the struct pin. We can see that we've got location, rotation, and scale. And we can actually go this one further. Vector is a struct. We can actually split that. Split the struct pin. And now you can see that it's gone to the floats for the X, Y, and Z. So if I only wanted specific pieces of information from a struct, I can break it. Now, if I want to reverse that, I can go and recombine the struct pin. I can do this again to bring it back to basically being the transform. Keep that up for right now. What they're talking about with, and there are other structures here. There are things that refer to interfaces, enums. We'll worry about that later. But what the slide is talking about is object types. And again, a lot of the times we could be asking, again, we can search for an actor. So don't worry
about soft object, soft class don't worry about these right now. Class references and object references. So when we talk about, there will be times where we will ask for a class reference. So we're asking for, this is the class we want to spawn. All right. This could have easily been, let me rename this. Projectile spawn. And we could have easily turned this into an actor. And we would want the class reference. So we want to say, what class of projectile are we spawning? So that when we talk about class, we're talking about the blue, essentially again, when we talk about classes, that is the blueprint of the class. That is how it's structured. Let's say that there's another, we'll make another variable, current target. And we can go in and we can now create, this would be an actor. But we would be an object reference in this case. So a object reference means an instance of an object, an instance of a class that's in the scene essentially. And we can get that multiple ways. We got get all actors of again. We're getting all the instances of that class. That would be this variable type. Or return. And again, one of the things that we could potentially have, again, if we say like moving a runner, it would be, let's say, path points. Now it would be the variable type of an actor, a references of actors. We can then set it up to be an array. There's set maps, but basically you're going to be working between singles and array. So is it a single reference or is it multiple references? Is it an array? So now I would be able to go in and file. Let's go back to bring this back here. Let's just drag this. Drag this into the scene for right now. And now I can go. Where is the? This is where. Oh, there's something I haven't done. So one of the things is that you would like these. So one of the first things is that so I want to make this editable in the editor. So I'll make this instance editable. Now we'll recompile, and now here we go. Here is the path points. So I can go and say, I'll click on you. So let's go back to light. And then there is the lock right here. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to click you, and I can assign it. Is it showing? Yeah, there it is now. Okay. And I'll say you will be the next path point. And whatever this is going to be the next. And don't get me wrong, I'm just picking objects in the scenes, but like later on, you will actually make an object that moves through path points. You'll actually make a path point like object for path points. It'll be useful because then you can assign, basically say, just give me these objects and move forward. I'm going to just jump back. Player input, we're going to move. So this is, ignore the input. Look at this because a lot of old documentation still uses this, but we'll move on to new input mappings in a little bit. Yeah. to go back in and I am actually going to, and again, you can delete these to remove them because I don't need any of those variables. But let's go back, compile, let's go back to my viewport. Let's take a look at the cube. So this is going to be my collision box. So I'm actually going to move this up. I'm going to make this, and I'm actually going to take the cube and repair attached. So I'm actually going to have the cube here. Again, this is, I'm actually going to bring this, this is transform. I'm going to bring this down to 0.2. And it's basically, you can see it sitting in the middle of the, and I'm going to set the cube on top. And this will allow me to scale this as I see fit. I am going to add, and here is the add component button. I need a light component, and I need a point light. And I'll default this to red. And so now I've got everything here I need to build this object out. Again, I've added the box, basically was added by plus. So cube is here, and then it's just easy to type collision, and I added a box collision. Be mindful, there's the capsule collision and sphere collision. So depending on your object, you might be using one of these. Players are going to use the sphere collision because it's round around its body, so it doesn't get caught on edges or walls. And it's rounded on top and bottom, so it's easy to go up and down like inclines. It's an improvement on the cylinder. And again, sphere, basically, if you're using the simplest collision, then use a sphere. Space games are all using sphere colliders for our purposes. Unless it's Star Citizen, then God knows what they're doing. Any questions on what I've done so far? I've gone pretty fast. All right, I need to stop the recording right here for one moment. So this lecture will be there'll be two videos for this lecture essentially.